Hi, I'm Jenny Backus, Acting Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs here at HHS, and welcome to our 11th web chat on the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is full of important benefits for you and your family that help bring down healthcare costs, improve quality, and give you more control over your own care. But sometimes the bill can be confusing, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So we're here to try to answer your questions and get you the latest, most up-to-date information. Joining us in the studio today is HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius from right here at HHS, Steve Larson, Deputy Director of Oversight at the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight, and Karen Politz, Deputy Director for Consumer Support, also with the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight, a new office that was actually created as part of the Affordable Care Act. Thank you all for coming. So today we're going to talk about health insurance oversight and accountability. The Affordable Care Act includes some important resources to help people like you figure out your rights when it comes to health insurance. And we've asked you all to submit your own personal questions. If you want to send us a question today, right now live during our chat, you can tweet us, and our Twitter handle is @HHSGOV, or you can email us, and that address is healthreform@hhs.gov. If you could keep your questions short, that would be great. We may have to paraphrase them a little bit, although we try to get the sense of your question right there. And if we don't get to your question today, check out our website, healthreform.gov, and you might find your answer, because every day we try to answer as many of the most frequently asked questions that we're getting. So, Secretary, you've had quite a week. We're going to talk about insurance oversight, but you were the president yesterday. Tell us a little bit about that event.
Well, President Obama is concerned that there is a lot of misinformation in the senior community about what stays the same with Medicare benefits, what changes, and what new benefits may be coming the way of senior beneficiaries. So yesterday was a town hall meeting in Wheaton, Maryland, where the president was live in person. But then we had seniors join us from about 100 sites around the country. We had HHS officials out around the country. And the focus was not only what assuring seniors that their guaranteed benefits will stay the same, that they will have choices with Medicare Advantage plans going forward, but also reminding seniors that one of his top priorities is going after fraud, waste, and abuse. He's asked that we cut our error rate down by 50%, cut it in half, ramp up those efforts to make sure we're taking seriously our responsibility to keep the Medicare trust fund solvent, and also going after fraudulent activities, really prosecuting and preventing fraud from happening, going after the scam artists who are out after seniors, and reminding seniors that tomorrow starts the $250 rebate check for the gap in prescription coverage, the so-called donut hole that some seniors will reach this year, and those checks will be mailed starting tomorrow, but mailed once a month, every month.
So consumer information, which is what the president was doing yesterday, and actually you can find information about those donut hole checks on our website or on Medicare.gov. But we have a new office, the Office of Consumer Information and Oversight. Steve, what do you think? You're in charge of oversight, kind of a nice broad topic. What do you think your biggest challenge is going to be, and what are some of the things that the new office is already doing to help consumers in the area of insurance oversight?
What's the biggest challenge? Well, you know, the new law has a lot of different patient protection provisions that take effect pretty soon, so we're working very hard to make sure that we get the rules and regulations out and in place so that the laws are very clear for the health plans and they know what the rules of engagement are. So that's probably one of the most important things that we're doing now. And I think, as we talked about, or will talk about, we had a new announcement this week for the rate review grants for the states, and that's I think going to really help consumers a lot coming down the road.
And Karen, consumer information. So you have oversight and consumer information. Obviously, they're probably very closely related, but tell me a little bit, what are the sort of resources that are coming in new months? What are the things that you want to do in that office to make sure you get information out to consumers?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is open a new website. That's going to be on July 1st. Great big website. I don't have the name of it yet, but that is a big project that's in the work. And that will show on July 1st all of the health insurance policies that are for sale for individuals and for small businesses throughout the country. So you can go on the website, look up your state, and see what's available for you. A little bit later this year, we'll put up information about pricing, sort of what at least the sticker price is for those policies. And then a few months down the road after that, we'll start loading up some really important performance information. So how do these plans really work for people? You know, what kinds of enforcement actions and complaints, and what are the things that they do well, so that folks can have a really better understanding about how what their health insurance options are. And then that site will also have information about these new protections that Steve just talked about, and explain what those are and what to expect and how those work as they come online over the next few years.
And we're actually planning to do a specific web chat once that website is open, so we'll walk you through it. And Secretary did this for Medicare.gov. We really are wanting to put a big consumer focus on what we do here. Well, we've got a lot of questions. I think this new office has got a lot of people asking questions. And I might want to just start with Steve, because you mentioned it before and I should have asked you then. What is rate review? We're talking about rate review grants. For an average consumer, what is rate review, and what does that have to do with insurance oversight?
Well, for insurance companies to change their rates or to propose increases in their rates, they typically have to go to the insurance department and file their proposal with the insurance department. And the state laws vary. But rate review is the process of making sure that the proposed rate increases that insurers are filing are justified and fair. And like I said, many states have different rules about how that works. But generally, rate review is the process of making sure that the rates are fair and justified.
You sent a letter about this earlier this year to governors and state insurance commissioners, because there's some differences. Can you explain a little bit about why you sent that letter and
Sure.
these differences that are out there?
Well, Steve and I are both former state insurance commissioners, so this is a world we know pretty well. Every state has an insurance commissioner and insurance office. Some are appointed by the governor, some are elected, but every state has an office whose main job is to make sure that companies selling insurance in that state are licensed, that they follow the rules, and that there is some, as Steve said, rate oversight. In some states, it's pretty rigorous. Companies have to submit a lot of financial data. Commissioners take a look at how much money is being spent on medical costs, what the trends are in terms. In other states, there are laws in place that don't even require the company to file in advance with the insurance commissioner or to really talk about what the rates are. So one of the things that I wanted governors to take a look at is what were the laws in their state, because the Affordable Care Act really assumes this is a state responsibility. Insurance oversight is a state function. The regulation is a state function. We want to help support states. We want to provide the backup, but reminding governors, if they don't have the authority right now to do the full review, they may want to talk to their legislature about getting that authority, because their consumers, in whether it's Indiana or Texas or Maine, are going to expect somebody to keep an eye on the insurance companies. And if legally they don't have the power now, we need them to seek that power. And we want to help them with rate review, which is what the grants that Steve started to talk about are about.
And that's actually, if you want to build on that a little bit, Karen had asked, what about rate review? We have an anonymous question that says, can you explain more about the grant? So these,
Sure.
What are they going to do? Yeah.
So every state can apply for the grants. The grants are $1 million, and the purpose of the grant is to enhance...
Per state, $1 million per state?
$1 million per state.
So if you divided $1 million by 50, that would...
51
yeah.
in the District of Columbia. And every state can apply. And the purpose of the grants is to enhance the resources that states have to conduct the reviews that we've been talking about. Not only do the laws vary, but the resources that the states have vary too. And we know that the insurance companies have a lot of resources. They have a lot of money and a lot of resources, and this really helps to level the playing field and provide the states with the tools to hire outside actuaries, to hire other consultants. And we're hoping that they will use this, and we're asking them, if they get the grant, to use this all to increase some of the transparency, the sunlight around these processes, so that they'll post things on their websites, proposed increases, ultimately the justifications that the insurance companies provide for their rate increases.
And Secretary, Karen, I don't mean to hold you, I'm going to come to you in a second, but Secretary, you have actually been doing a little bit of that with the WellPoint case and with the California rates. I mean, I guess you should all get your input on this, but this sunlight and transparency actually sometimes can change behavior of companies. I mean, that's not being far-fetched, right? I mean, we've already seen that this year.
Well, actually, what happened in California is a pretty interesting example. WellPoint filed an up to 39% increase for about 800,000 policyholders. Got a lot of attention around the country. It got a lot of attention here in Washington. And at the point that they filed that, their state insurance commissioner actually announced that he was going to conduct a review, the same kind of review that Steve is talking about. Asked them then to submit additional data, looked at the actuarial table, and found, in fact, that the trend line that had been used by WellPoint to project what their rates should be, this is what we're seeing, were just wrong. They were too high. They weren't able to justify them mathematically. And what I did is then write to the governors in other states, which are almost every state in the country where WellPoint does business, and say if they filed the wrong trend line in California, you all should really ask your insurance commissioners to look at the filing in your state, because it's quite logical that a national company would use that same trend line. And it was an example of the kind of impact. So the rate has been entirely withdrawn in California. They may refile at a different point. But I think it's the kind of impact that a rate review, that asking questions, that asking for the backup materials can really have. Those 800,000 Californians aren't paying 40% more right now for their health insurance based on that question and backup data asked by, not by us, but by the state insurance commissioner.
Okay. Well, speaking of information, I mean, it's information and transparency. Your office is in charge of getting information out to consumers. Melanie wants to know, what are some new benefits, things that consumers will see this year to protect them from insurance industry discrimination?
Well, and we've got a nice little list getting started. So one of the first things, and this warms my own heart as the mother of a college-age student, is that starting this fall, as plans renew, they'll be required to allow parents to keep their kids on the coverage as dependents up until they turn 26. And that's important because in group plan coverage, there are already a lot more rules that would prohibit discrimination, so that if your kid has a health problem and would have trouble buying coverage on their own, they can still stay safely longer under their parents' policy. So that's a great thing. Later this year, under all policies, there will be more protections against children up to age 19. They won't be turned down anymore or have their pre-existing condition excluded. We're going to have new and important protections against rescission, a pretty ugly practice that has gone on mostly in the individual market, where people buy a policy, apply, state their health, they're issued coverage, then later they make a claim, and the insurance company goes back and kind of redoes its investigation to see if they can find a reason why they should have turned somebody down way back when, and then takes the policy away if they can find that. So new, tighter protections against rescission, that's going to be really important, and an end to lifetime limits. So we're gradually getting to the comprehensive set of protections that will take place in 2014, but a lot of these important steps will begin later this fall.
Okay. You guys have all touched on this, and we're coming down to the last 5 minutes here, so I'm going to put like 2 questions out there and ask you, comment on each of them. Miller from Florida wants to know, how does rate review and some of these oversight things help consumers? And then maybe a good wrap-up sort of question is, what kinds of protections are in place in the law, not just with rate review, that will help make sure that insurance companies play by the rules? So let's end with that, but let's just go to, what are some other things, protections that are in place inside the legislation? And Karen, let's just start, and how does rate review and some of this stuff help consumers? So let's start with that one.
Well, I think, as you heard both Steve and the Secretary say, the first important thing is to make sure that someone's taken a look. Accountability goes a long way in this game. And, you know, it's hard. I think it's hard to keep track on insurance. There are thousands of policies out there and a lot of transactions that go on a daily basis. So this is a tough thing. And I think these grants will help build more capacity so that regulators can keep an eye on this. And the buildup of Steve's new office here will create new capacity in Washington to back that up.
And there's grants coming later this year for your information, too. So it's both oversight and information?
So then on the consumer side, later this year, we'll also issue some grants to states to create new capacity for health insurance assistance for consumers. So kind of a dedicated place that you can go to with your health insurance questions, with your problems. If you had a claim denied, these programs will help file your appeal for you so that you don't have to kind of work your way through all that red tape alone. And that's going to be critical. I think building into our whole system a consumer focus is just critical, and that has to be, and it will be, the benchmark for how we know that insurance is doing its good job. We're always going to be looking for ways to measure how insurance actually works for people, and particularly when they get sick and have to make a claim.
And Steve, what are some more protections, and then I'll end with the Secretary, but what are some more protections that are in this bill that can help you with accountability?
Well, one that we haven't touched on is this idea of the medical loss ratio, which is really just a ratio of the amount that carriers pay out to doctors and hospitals for clinical services and treatments and doctor's visits and things that they spend on quality compared to the amount of premiums they take in. So the bill sets up a threshold that requires that consumers really get value for their premium dollar. Ultimately, we want to make sure that for every dollar you're paying that you're getting value from the insurance company, and they're not using too much for administrative costs and profits.
So Secretary, as the last sort of question here, you've got this new office, you put it together. What is the takeaway message that Americans need to know about what the Affordable Care Act does to sort of the private insurance and the role of the department with that?
Well, I think the President felt it was important to start with the idea that about 180 million Americans have employer-based private coverage. So while there were some people who felt just start all over again, create a whole new system, he thought that would be incredibly disruptive to a whole lot of folks. So the bill is really built on the private insurance system. But having said that, the rules will change. They're changing this year, and they'll change over time, looking out for the consumer. So the private companies will still sell insurance policies, but with a new set of rules. You can't price people out of the market. You can't dump people out of the market. You can't lock sick people out of the market. You will have a new set of rules that will gradually go into place until 2014. And as I say, the states enforce those rules as a primary idea, but we will, at the federal level, help states, provide resources to states, provide technical assistance to states, and if they choose not to do it, we will step in to make sure that consumers, wherever they live in the country, are protected.
All right. Well, this is a topic that we will be back, I think, and touching on several times over the course of the implementation of this bill. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us today. Secretary Sebelius from HHS, Steve Larson, the Deputy Director of Oversight for the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight, and Karen Politz, Deputy Director for Consumer Support, also with the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight. We hope we got to some of your questions today. I know we didn't get to as many as we wanted to, but keep an eye on that website. And also, we're going to archive this show on our website, so pass it along to a friend. We're all about consumer information today. And make sure that you check the site often, because we're updating with all the new stuff that's coming out of the offices. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.